Welcome back to Kettle Additions. I'm Austin McElroy, master brewer of Cabin Boys Brewery, and today I have a guest, Cody Driscoll from Marshall Brewing Company. And remember, this podcast is all about how a brewery keeps a brewery brewing. I said that wrong. How to keep a brewery brewing.
I like
there
that.
we go. Yeah. First guest onto the podcast, so thank you for being here.
Yeah.
This is super cool.
Yeah,
how are you doing?
Good. Yeah. Thanks for having me. Sorry I'm in the brewery attire, but you know how it goes. You just slough off the boots and you put on some slippers and yeah.
Well, I'm still in my boots.
You're still working.
Yeah, so I'm still working. We're here. We're talking about brewing, so I thought we had to dress like we were brewing, right?
I missed that text. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, so just so you guys know, he's got pants on that are green, brewing pants with double knees. He's got some what looks like Birkenstocks, maybe not. We're on a brewery budget, so
for sure
it could be a knockoff, and a Carhartt hat and a Carhartt to match vest. You look good.
I think I'm wearing all green.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm wearing all green.
I like it. Yeah, unicolor is perfect.
Yep.
Well, okay, so Cody, tell everybody what you do at Marshall's and why I know you.
Cool. So at Marshall, I'm a brewer, and I like to play around in the QA/QC lab. And yeah, so I make beer, and I make sure the beer tastes the way it should and the way the customer expects when they pick up that product.
Yeah.
Consistency is the key, I think, in making a product. And so I'm one of the few guys that help make that happen.
Yeah.
So I've been at Marshall for 4 years now, and yeah, it's been a great home.
You certainly undersold yourself. So, Cody keeps pretty much all the liquid at Marshall's. If I'm not speaking correctly, you keep it in good form.
Yeah.
From the brewing house to packaging. Now,
Sure.
Everybody else that's
Sure.
working there also
Sure.
helps with that and does that and has that passion. But as you guys listen to this podcast, you know that I want this to be technical and whatnot. But what I was really curious and why I wanted to bring you on was because you just taught our team how to reuse our lab. Yeah. And we have a lab at Cabin Boys that is really cool. It's got a PCR and what you guys have at Marshall's as well. So it was very complimentary, and thank you for your help.
Oh, of course.
All of the tests came out negative.
All of them came back
that was
negative.
great. We'll get into what that means. But so what I would – the things that people probably don't realize is beer is incredibly delicate.
Mm-hmm.
Explain to me, like, I don't know anything to beer, because beer is in a can, and I'm actually drinking a pre-prohibition lager from Marshall that Cody brought us. Why is it so difficult to get to this point of a beer being in a can that people love?
Yeah.
That's a pretty
open-ended
question, but
it's a great question. There's the old fun saying that brewing is equal part art and science, and my add-on to that is the artistic side, kind of the chef-minded side, takes place, like to brew a batch of beer to taste good one time, but then the scientific part comes in to make that beer consistently taste good 300 batches later. And so it's a massive hands-on process, as you know, and it's you got to get all of your brewing calculations all within like a certain specification. You got to keep oxygen out. You got to make sure your yeast are healthy, because really what we're doing as brewers is just babysitting like a single-celled fungus, right?
Yeah.
And giving it conditions to like produce the things that we want it to produce. And I think that's really, really cool. So yeah, we're just babysitting, and after we do like the hot side of making the wort,
which is the actual brewing
which
process.
is the actual brewing
Yep.
process, and then it's just checks and balances from there to make sure that it's finishing at its appropriate finishing gravity, and you do that ahead of time by making sure you have good, viable, and good viability and good vitality with your yeast strains to make sure that you're not going to slough off or under attenuate. And from there, you just got to keep oxygen out, which is just on our level. It's always kind of a thing.
And so you said two things that listeners may not know. So viability and vitality of the yeast. So when you use it, when you pitch it into a batch of beer, what do those two words mean?
Yeah. So a lot of brewers that are coming on, and like home brewers and early commercial brewers, they've heard the word viability quite a bit. And that's literally just how many soldiers do you have fighting your battle? And vitality is like how many of those soldiers are Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson that are there like the powerhouse and do the thing, and how many of them are just, wimpy little cells. So at Marshall, we put more of an emphasis on vitality, because viability, you can have millions of cells.
Basically dead or alive.
Yeah. It's either it's living or it's not. And so a lot of people will use that number and be like, oh, we're good. But you want to have a good, clean, healthy fermentation. So you want to make sure that the amount that are living are actually rock stars and are there to fight the battle that they need to. So that's the big difference between viability and vitality. Viability is total number, and vitality is how good are they.
Right. And so the way that I understand it, or what I was taught in school and see, is, you through the fermentation process, however stressed or not stressed the yeast is going to scar the outside of that cell from how many generations it's had, and how much, like, really, I kind of describe it as how long is this yeast going to run the race?
Yeah.
Like, you and I going out and running a marathon, you would not want to put us into a fermentation.
Oh,
because
God, no.
we're going to make it maybe mile 1 and probably die.
Yeah, for sure. Then I'm looking for a beer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so you have that scar tissue, which doesn't allow, if I'm speaking correctly, you would know more than me, that scar tissue and how stressed it's been throughout life is going to determine how vital and how much it's going to actually do.
Yeah, for sure.
So, okay, so you said another crucial thing, which is oxygen. So we need oxygen, but we don't need oxygen.
Right.
Why?
So you need oxygen, like coming from the hot side to the cold side. You need that oxygen to help build the cell structure of the yeast and help strengthen that, so it can be kind of harden itself and to reproduce and do kind of give that structure a good platform to replicate. And so you oxygenate at the first part to give your yeast cells a fighting chance and a better growth of number.
Yeah, which is literally injecting oxygen into the, if I understand it right?
Yeah, it straight up. And from that point, they uptake all that oxygen, and then they go into their anaerobic cycle, and from there, no oxygen should be
present
unless you're doing like barrel aged stuff, but that's a whole different thing. And that's part of it. Yeah. But that's a whole different thing. So it's from the point, once you're in the fermenter, no oxygen whatsoever.
Right.
And, with being a craft brewer, we do, like, our canning line is open to the air, and it'll purge the cans with CO2, but it's not like a counter pressure, and it's not, so for about 2 or 3 seconds before it gets seamed. You want to make sure it has
protection.
a lot of protection to keep it from getting some of that bad oxygen into it and reducing the shelf life.
I would probably say oxygen is the number one mistake in beer, specifically.
Yeah.
Before any kind of beer contaminant, which we'll get into, but like when you when you're packaging and paying attention to beer going into a can or a keg, oxygen is the number one destroyer of beer. So could you explain why oxygen is so bad and can destroy a beer so quickly? And if you can't, then that's fine.
Yeah, I can make up an answer here all day. But no, I think oxygen's so bad because there's so many precious volatile type compounds within a beer that so much of it's based off of flavor and aroma, and you oxidize those precious compounds, and now all of a sudden you're getting like cardboard and papery flavors that are covering up those expensive hops that you throw in, those artisanal malts that you're putting in. So you're masking all of the beautiful things that you put into the beer. And oxidized beer won't hurt you, but it just won't taste the way that us, the brewers, intended. And that always sucks. Like you see a beer on the shelf, or you get a pour of a beer that you work for one batch of beer. By the time you brew it, transfer it, package it, you probably have 40 man hours into the beer. And you go sit down at the bar and you have like a brown dishwater looking beer that just like takes the life out of your sails, or life out of your whatever.
Sales and sales.
Sale. Yeah, exactly. Damn, that was good. I like that. And one of the things that we're really, we had a pretty bad recall a couple years ago with our Oktoberfest batch. We had a pediococcus contamination. Speaking of another big thing that's...
I would say that's probably number 2.
Yeah, and most people that aren't re-pitching a whole bunch of like generations on their yeast, or they're not a big packaging brewery, they're doing everything in the tap room, they're keeping it cold, you're probably not as worried about these things because you don't really give it time to proliferate or do what it's going to do. But we had like a 600 case recall of Oktoberfest, and that you don't have a problem until you have a problem, and then you find out you have a problem, and now it's
a bummer to go backwards.
Yeah.
It's a big bummer.
Then you spend all of the time like cleaning and sanitizing and re-cleaning and just trying to, like, fingers crossed we got rid of it.
Okay, so for the people listening, pediococcus is bacteria.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think in that? So what happened with Marshall's 2 years ago was they had 600 cases of Oktoberfest, which your Oktoberfest is just gorgeous, and so that hurt my very soul.
Yeah.
When that happened, because that is like ripping. A brewery lives for Oktoberfest.
Sure. Yeah.
And when that happens, it literally ripped my soul out for you.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you think pediococcus got into your system? And then what people don't understand is it's not just the recall of the beer that hurts and having to pay to get that beer back into your brewery and destroy it. So two-part question. Explain the repercussions of how detrimental that is. And so how did it get in, do you think? And I know that this is a couple years ago and you didn't have a super proper lab at that point in time. How did it get in, and what made that, what created, or what should I say? What was the reverberation of that cause that you guys had to do? You said cleaning, but explain how incredibly intense that is to find it.
Yeah. It was awful. Like, to answer the first part of your question, we believe it was, we took a lager strain a little too far past like what we normally do to kind of make things work and for the schedule. And,
But
and
that
for the
is-
most part, like it's always like 99% it's fine. And this was the one time that it just kind of bit us in the ass. And we took it a few generations too far, and I don't think we had a good pitch of viable, like a healthy fermentation. So normally with yeast, there's always some kind of, micro contamination here or there, but you have like the yeast will take over and just kind of dominate and snuff out all the other stuff.
It'll pretty much kind of, it won't necessarily kill it off, but it won't allow it to grow.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
It will just deter it and it leaves it with really nothing, no competition space. It can't do anything.
Right. No oxygen to live in, CO2 environment.
Yeah.
All the things that PDO doesn't like.
Sure.
Low pH.
Sure.
So tell me, okay, so that's interesting. So too many pitches, which means to the listeners out there that doesn't know, that's the reuse of the yeast going into the next batch. Mm-hmm. How many pitches did you go to?
I think that was 15 or 16.
Which that's not insane.
No, it's not crazy. But with at that time, like you were saying, we weren't so. So actually, I'll get into the next part of the question. We were up to that point very reactive.
Sure.
And so because Marshall, like just 15 years old at that time, never really had an issue. And so it's like, okay, we're just keep going. So it puts you like, you're just reactive and you're like, hey, everything's good. And then when something happens, now you're trying to figure out what happened. So it switched our mentality after that. And, like every brewery at some point has some kind of contamination. If you don't, then it's coming. But it switched our mentality from reactive to proactive. So now we're testing things to make sure that everything is the way it should be from grain to glass. And I think that's the biggest thing that craft breweries can do is just make sure that you're proactive and not reactive, because it's much harder to be reactive.
And expensive.
And much more expensive.
But, I mean, even in that stance, like 600 cases for Marshalls is, let's call it kind of a drop in the bucket.
Sure.
Kind of. But that is huge.
Yeah.
Especially when you're releasing your beautiful Oktoberfest.
And I'll tell you
I want to say this. I'm not trying to shine light into that situation for Marshall. It's just a great learning point for listeners to see how delicate beer is.
Absolutely.
And not shining shade on Marshall, because if you're a brewery, you've been through that.
Mm-hmm.
Like 100%. If you open up a brewery, you will have a moment like that. It's without a doubt.
Mm-hmm.
So, but in the moment, in that year, how many man hours? So that you say 40 man hours for one batch, and probably that amount for that 60 or 600 cases. But how many man hours thereafter do you think that it took you to get the brewery to where you were comfortable?
To be honest, I still almost have like a knee-jerk reaction sleeping, and I'll think about like, oh shit, like, or I'll see like an Untapped check-in and somebody has like a can of Oktoberfest. It's like almost kind of gives me like a
PTSD.
Yeah, it's like, oh yeah. So I'm still recovering from that big recall.
So we're talking thousands of man hours.
Oh, for sure. Just mental man hours. And then also, after we got all the cases back from our distributor, destroying all those cases, which to pull 600 cases worth of pack tex off of each individual can. And then we started off just popping the tops off all of them, dumping them, and then that was like, well, this is a nightmare. Our fingers hurt over it. So Tim Brophy, he's our Mr. Fix It. So everything I break, he fixes. And he devised this thing. It's just like a rotary saw type thing with a chute that just destroys the cans. But anyway, we went through every fermenter, every tank, every hose, everything, and just burned the living shit out of them, so to speak.
Which burning in the brewery industry means that they used 180 degree water to pasteurize everything.
And we use a lot of a lot of chemicals, but knock on wood, that doesn't happen to us again. So I think we're past it.
I don't think any brewery, even if they were like just sole enemies, would wish that upon anybody.
No.
It's awful to watch. Awful. So Pediococcus being a bacteria that we obviously don't want to see in a brewery. What do you do within your fermentation cellar now to prevent the growth of that? Talk a little bit about the chemicals that we use and how that process and how that tank is clean.
So, just like before, right after the contamination recall, we hit our tanks with pretty much every chemical. But now, as like a normal SOP, we will do like our alkaline cleaner,
caustic,
cellar master, whatever, to clean the tank of all the soil that it has, and then we will perform like an ATP test within the tank, which is adenosine triphosphate, I think. Might check me on that.
You're good.
Yeah,
you're tracking.
Yeah,
you're tracking.
So it's
we use these acronyms and then we kind of forget what they mean.
Exactly.
I'm impressed that you pulled that up.
Oh, I just read the brochure and I hope it flies. But the after we clean a tank and we rinse it free of all the detergent, we will swab the inside of a tank and make sure, and we'll put it in this fun little device and make sure it doesn't contain any living matter. And because all cells, will produce some level of ATP for energy and whatever. Right. So, and again, it's been a long time since I've taken micro classes. So
You're fine. You're doing good.
I'm pulling this out of my ass. That's
You're
why
doing good.
I had to lift up a little bit. And so from there, if we get like a good clean number, then we'll move forward. We'll sanitize the tank with peracetic acid, hydrogen peroxide mixed with vinegar, essentially. Yep. And it's a strong oxidizer, and it sanitizes the shit out of the tank. And so that's kind of what we go with. And then
it's pretty much a liquid fire.
Yeah.
Is how I describe it.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't you love whenever you discover like 5 minutes later you have some undiluted PAA on your finger?
Oh, yeah. Well,
it's like, oh, my finger hurts.
It starts itchy and then it hurts.
Yeah. It's like, oh, now
then your
powdery
skin gets white and discolored. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's real nice.
I love it. I love it. So, yeah. So that's basically what we do now, and it seems to be working. And then so you get your fermenter as clean as you possibly can, and then you knock out into it. You assume that you did a good job cleaning your plate chiller, your wort chiller adequately enough, and sanitize it well enough that you go into the fermenter and you have a clean fermenter, you have a good, healthy pitch of yeast. And so from that point, you assume everything's going to be fine. And then at fermentation, after it kind of slows down, I'll spun the tank, or I'll close off the tank, and that back pressure actually helps increase the cell structure. It gives the yeast a good, I think it's glycerol stores, or it's been a while, but
that's fine.
It gives like a good structure back to the yeast, which helps heal and gives better vitality down the line for further pitches. So we'll do that. And then that's normally where I'll do the first PCR check. And PCR is a polymerase chain reaction, and it's basically just taking DNA. It's a test that takes DNA in a given sample, and it takes it through different temperatures to grow up the DNA so you can get a good, solid understanding of what's in that sample. So after fermentation slows, I spun the tank. I'll give it a PCR check and see what's in that sample, assuming I did like a good aseptic sample.
Yep.
And that's where I'll check it. And I assume if that comes back good, the yeast is good, so it's good to pull from for the next generation. And then from there, the beer's done fermenting. We'll send it into a clean, sanitized bright tank, and then we'll package it, and then I'll test some cans and bottles. We don't do bottles anymore, but I'll test cans, and all good there. Then I can assume everything upstream has been good up to that point. And so, yeah, Jesus, take the wheel, I guess. So, and
then we're back to oxygen.
And then we're this back to oxygen. It's like, oh my goodness. Hopefully this product tastes as delicious as it does 3 months in the consumer's hands is what it does right now. So,
yeah.
So people are, Alex and Tim, they make fun of me because I check Untapped at least once a week. I think I hate myself that much, and so I'll check Untapped, and then somebody will be like, oh, more of a stout than a porter. I hate porters, 2 caps, It just...
It's a sad world to go into, man. Yeah. I quit that like 4 years ago.
Yeah, I need to just delete the app because
you need to take that drug away from yourself.
I know.
It's really bad.
Best beer I've ever had. 3 caps.
Yeah. Kolsch, why did this brewery ever make it? Mm-hmm. I don't like this style, but probably good. 1 star.
Yeah. Exactly.
Or 1 cap.
Yeah.
But, oh my goodness. So, beer being that delicate and that tumultuous to get into a can, that's a huge amount of effort. And then you read Untapped and someone gives it 3 stars. How do you because this is a question for myself too. How do you keep yourself brewing?
That's a great question. Also, that was a great word. Tumultuous.
Tumultuous?
That was a great word. I'm going to have to slip that one into my daily rotation. But it is upsetting because you spend so much time, but also it is rewarding in and of itself because somebody purchased that beer. And, you hope to think that they enjoyed it. And if they give it a bad review, it's still a win because they purchased the beer. So, and hopefully they drink it again and give it another shot, or maybe they try another one from our portfolio because we offer a wide range of things. And I like to think that there's a beer for everybody out there.
Amen to that.
And, I love beer. Beer is cool because it's not pretentious. It's people making a product and they give you the product and it's delicious. Whereas I always say, like, I think it's more complex than wine, and I know that will kill a lot of people.
Sure.
But wine, it's like, oh, you opened it too soon, or you didn't wait long enough, or oh, it's already past its prime. That wasn't a good year. Beer doesn't have that luxury. It's like beer has to be consistently the product that you want it to be. And we have no excuse.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure.
And we're only working with, I mean, grapes obviously are only
Sure.
working with one ingredient and, well, two, grapes and yeast.
Mm-hmm.
But beer, we're working with what is called the 4 ingredients of beer, which is water, malt, hops, and yeast.
Mm-hmm.
But we have all of these different brands and different beers that all taste completely different, but they're all supposed to taste the exact same every single time that you open up that can. But we're working with the same kind of what, if you want to call it, the lack of terms, the terroir of the malt that we're selecting, the hops that we're selecting, and everything in between to create the same thing that we created 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
That is a tough cookie to crack.
Yeah, for sure.
So if you guys went through the same thing that we did, which you did, the last 2 years has completely changed and morphed the way that I look at the malt world. Talk about how you guys kept your consistency of flavor. And if you didn't do this, I'm enamored. But changing from one malt to another, what was that journey like? Because we've gone from chemical to raw material, and changing malts is scary.
Yeah.
So first, did you change in the last couple of years because of a war we won't mention? but and how did you change your idea of what the beer was going to be in the can?
So that's a great question. It's you make the change. We went from Environment. Environment makes world-class products, some of the best stuff around, and then we
Appreciate.
And then life happens and things just get expensive, and in order for us to give the customer the same kind of price point of what they're expecting, we did not downgrade malt at all. We just went to domestic malt, stuff that's grown and malted in the USA, and it's Proximity's done a damn good job. Proximity makes a very, very good product, and beyond that, like we didn't do anything else. We did a direct kind of swap, and
kind of a one-to-one.
And we've pivoted on some hops here and there, and we've just kind of kept the bare bones and the roots of what Marshall is the same. And I think we got lucky, and the brands are as good, if not better, than they've ever been. Like, it's just at the end of the day, you're just having good, knowledgeable people that put these ingredients together, and you hope for the best, and that's what we did. And I think I'm very proud of where we're at. Very proud of where we're at.
Heck yeah.
So that's the best answer I can give you. And I wish I had a better answer of, we looked at all the COAs and, certificates of analysis of this and this. And, maybe we did a little bit of that, but we trusted, we tried it, and it's damn delicious. So
good.
That's where it is.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So we did the same thing.
Yeah.
We had to change from Wireman, sadly.
Mm-hmm.
I love that family. And have you ever been able to meet them?
No, I have not, no.
This incredible family. Cool people.
I'm kind of upset you're not wearing your red overalls.
Hey,
I'm jealous of those. I'm jealous of those, by the way.
Should that be my podcast attire?
I think so.
My red overalls.
Yes, it definitely should.
Okay, well, I'll change my ways, and I'll wear those from now on.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we changing from something so. I mean, I would argue that they make some of the best malt in the world.
Sure.
And then going to something I just found, I didn't go through all the COAs like tooth and comb, but I asked a friend what he changed from, and he gave me a report of the Great Western's pure Idaho malt, and it kind of matched. And I was like, okay, cool. And did the 1-to-1 change, and actually saw a lot of our brands improve in a little bit of areas and decrease in some others. And but it was a change that had to happen. But so we as brewers, we have our war stories. as he opens up another beer. we have our war stories, and we actually went through one of your war stories.
One of my war stories?
War story.
Oh, I mean, about the recall.
About the recall.
Oh God, yeah.
That is a war story.
Yeah.
But like, okay, so on a day-to-day basis, I'm gonna change gears because we're gonna probably shut it down here in a little bit, but so a little less technical, right? So a war story of yours. You're strolling into your brewery, and what is the funniest thing or the strangest thing that you've walked into coming into work?
Oh, coming into work? Oh. I mean, it's got to be our taproom fire, right? Like that's got to be.
Well, but that's not funny. But okay,
yeah,
you can go into that.
But coming into work, like,
By the way, what he referenced, that was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Their taproom basically got lit on fire from an adjacent building, and that was a sight to behold.
It was neat.
That was super cool.
But so coming into work, I don't know of any good war stories, but I do have a pretty decent story of whenever I was still very, very green at, this is my third brewery I've worked for. And the first brewery I worked for, I won't say it for the sake of this story. You guys will figure it out. But again, still very green. This is like the first week I was on the brew house independently, and I was still going to college, and I was mashing in before work or before class. And I was just mashing in just a big old batch of Imperial IPA.
Nice.
And I was like, man, it's taking a while to like fill up the mash lauter ton. This is crazy. Man, it doesn't seem like that much liquid or that much volume. My grist case is now empty. And come to find out, I forgot to close the manway door to the mash lauter ton. So it was probably my role at this job. Like I was supposed to mash in, and then I would go to class. I'd come back, and I would, if somebody else had started the lauter, get my tank prepped. I'd come back in between classes and do the boil, knockout. Somebody would babysit the knockout, and I'd go back to class. That's how it worked. And so I was mashing in, and I forgot to close the manway door. And so no. I'm just sitting up there.
I didn't ask you to like pull your drawers down and tell your worst story.
No, I check every manway now.
Which is the door to the mash tun kettle.
Yeah. And so after this, oh shit. So now I had 1,000 pounds of grain and water on the floor that I had to now clean up. And I was like, I'm still expected to make this batch of beer today. So I remilled all the grain. Like I crushed all the grain, sent it back through the auger, and I mashed it in like normal. I never said a word about it.
Until now?
And,
publicly?
Publicly until now. But no, and that was probably my biggest blunder to date. I'm jinxing myself. That means I'm going to go in tomorrow and have an even worse one. But that was my biggest mistake to date. I was just like, oh, hey. Nope. No good. No good. So I had to work like 3 times as hard that day just to make it happen.
Just to make one batch of beer.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh no.
So that was fun. That was fun. And you know, the best thing about beer is so I'm stubborn, and so the best way that I learn is I have to mess up. You know.
Sure.
And so I don't know the right way exactly how to do things, but I definitely know the wrong way to do most things. And so I just do the opposite of the wrong way, and it seems to be working.
There you go.
Yeah.
I think that's how a lot of us get to where we're going.
Yeah.
Because you can go to school, you can learn all the ins and outs and the perfection of, you know, making a product, not even just beer. But until you do it, it's night and day of the difference of like, okay, yeah, you know all the calculations, you know all of the mixtures, you know this, that, and the other of what is technically supposed to work. And then until you do it, and I think that's the art of it.
Yeah.
That's the art of it, is until you do it, you really don't know.
It's just theory.
Right.
Yeah. It's you're watching and you're learning from somebody else, and then you got to like go and turn valves and do all the things and get that muscle memory of whatever they say, like 1,000 hours or 10,000. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So, okay. So last question. From your many beer drinking experiences,
mm-hmm.
If you had to choose a beer to be in your glass tonight, what would it be?
Oh, a beer to be in my glass tonight from all of my beer drinking experiences. So, you know, I'll hit you with an honest one.
Okay.
This is a beer that nobody else can get. It's the beer that got me started, and it's my father-in-law is a home brewer,
mm-hmm.
right? And a very good, decorated home brewer. And he's the one that got me started brewing. And he makes this beer called the Goat Scrotum Ale. And it's from the Charlie Papazian book.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
What it was, what's his book? The Complete Joy of Home Brewing, or The Joy of Home Brewing, or one of those. But anyway, Joe made this beer, and I was still like early college or before college, and he made this beer called the Goat Scrotum Ale, and it has literally everything in the kitchen sink. Like it's got licorice, ginger, chocolate, all of these things. And whenever he shared it with me, you know, he gave me a little sample. I don't know if I was 21, it was probably before then, but that beer really is what it's like, I'm going to make beer. This is cool. So,
awesome.
Yeah, I would say my father-in-law's Goat Scrotum Ale. And it's such a bad name, but that's the name that they have in the joy of home brewing. And so that's probably the beer. It's the one that holds the most weight to me, and holds the most value. It's the most nostalgic one. You know, the easy answer there would have been Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, but I thought I'd give you a better answer than that.
Heck yeah.
Heck yeah.
Well, Cody.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
This was fun.
Yeah, this is super great. So signing off of Kettle Additions, this is our second week, man, and hopefully many, many more to come. If you would, just like and subscribe and find our podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. That would be super duper. Because what we're trying to do here is just give our listeners some cool information about how beer is brewed and how keeping a business of the brewing business alive and what all goes into it. If you have questions or whatnot, just find us and ask, and expect a lot of really fun conversations about beer. Hopefully some laughs and some war stories and whatnot to come. So next week, it'll just be me, and I'll be talking about a subject that I deem should hit your ears. We'll see you next week, so thank you for listening.